Hey friends, welcome to Alice Resin Tea Paper tutorial part 2. This is what our end game is, and here is the part 1 mold that we made, or the design that we made. So it came out looking really good. I'm really happy with this. There's no holes, no air bubbles underneath, and because we brought that tea paper all the way up to the edges of our mold, there's no real space, which is great. So we're going to count this as a win. So moving forward, what you're going to need is an X-acto knife. Um, I use Cricut just because it's easy and they have coupons at Michael's all the time for discounts on these. So you're going to need some scissors. You're going to need a little cutting mat. I chose one with the sticky just to hold my film in place. You're gonna need some Mod Podge, and then some more of our little med cups and a brush for the next steps. So let's set this guy aside. And then I usually find a screen cap that I like. And then what I'll do is size it. So I normally print it out in black and white first, just to make sure that I have the correct size so I don't waste my ink. But I'll just hold my my resin piece, above it and make sure that it's able to be placed where I want it if I cut it out. So then I print it out on my sticker paper, which I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll try to put it in the comments for you guys later. And then I go ahead and cut those out with my scissors and get them ready to cut with my X-acto knife. I tend to keep that paper and use it until it gets to the very, very last bit that I'm able to print on, just because I don't like to waste. And you can see that our pictures end up being really small anyways. So I'm going to take my new board and I'm going to lay this picture flat on it because I'm going to cut out pieces with my X-acto knife. So I don't need the whole picture. I just want portions of it. And it holds it down so it doesn't move around and it's easier to cut. Because you don't want to cut yourself. I have a ton of cuts from my X-acto knife, but also because if you mess this part up, you have to go through and do everything over again up to this point, as far as printing out the picture and all that and cutting it, and it's just kind of a hassle. So you want to be very detail oriented at this point. You can go very slow. I take my time. Later on in the video, it's going to look like I'm Edward Scissorhands with how quickly I'm cutting through these, but that's just because the video is fast forwarded. So don't be tricked. Like at the top of her hair here, you can see there's a little black bow. And so I'm going to be really careful because it's so easy to cut through this paper and end up with a mistake. You definitely don't want to be trying to piece this together on your design any more than we're already doing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and speed this up just a bit. All right, so once we're done with that, we can go ahead and try to peel out that section of our image. So again, this is sticker paper, so you should be able to just lift it. If you can't lift it, I use my X-acto knife and kind of put it under the corner of one section and pull up. The thing is that even with this, in this case, you can see that I didn't make enough cut in certain areas. And if you pull too hard, you're going to rip the entire image. So you want to make sure not to do that either. Just do some little cuts around the areas that you may have missed, and then it should come up fairly easy. Right here you can see it's going to get caught on the bows a little bit, so I may need to, I need to do one more little cut here. Okay, she lifts right off. So we're going to hold her up to our design and make sure that we get her put exactly where we want her. If you put her down before you're ready and you try to pull it off of your resin design, what can happen is she can rip, she can tear. So we want to be careful with her. We want her situated just like that one. So the flowers are overlapping her lap, sitting basically right on her hands. So I'm going to go ahead and place her, push that down around the edge there. Her dress basically creates a guide for where you need to cut along your piece. So you can just take your X-acto knife, and it should be just a smooth cut along that edge because the paper is so thin and delicate. It's fairly easy to cut away. And you can clean that up later as well. For right now, that'll do though. So we're going to set that aside and we're going to start working on our flowers. I went ahead and fast forwarded this part as well. One thing I will say that I've learned from cutting things out like this is that you want to have kind of a clear idea about the section that you're cutting out and where the lines go. I've cut heads off, I've cut arms off and legs off. So I always take time now to kind of reevaluate and reassess which direction I'm supposed to be cutting. All right, so looks good. We're going to try to pull this off in one section. Oh, good. So it came up, so it should just pop right out. I'm going to grab my X-acto knife so that I can place it. I always tend to put it on my X-acto knife to place it just because I feel like that's easier than trying to fat finger it. Let's see. So I'm going to put it over her lap just like I did before. Part of it's going to be cut off, but I want to make sure that it's straight and doesn't look like it's lopsided, anything like that. Again, just going to push it over the edge and create that guide to cut along. I'm going to press these stickers down all the way under the resin piece, making sure that there's no room for air bubbles or little pockets. Could cause problems later. And on to the butterflies. I'm just going to use one or maybe two or three, maybe 10 of these. I really like this little guy. I think he's super cute. So I'm going to do just a couple of these on the ears of mine because we're not going to do a bow for this. Okay, I think I am going to do one more little one up in the corner just to give it a little bit more of something. I don't like to make them too big because I want to be able to still see the flower, the tea paper in the background. So I'm going to use this little guy right here. And we'll do one more. Okay, I like the way that that looks. It's coming together well. I'm going to make sure that those are just pressed down all the way. You don't want any air bubbles. But this is the time where if you have any excess like black residue or you maybe didn't cut close enough to your picture and there's other parts of the image, maybe you grabbed a bit of flour, you're just going to really clean up those edges. Especially before we start working into Mod Podge because then it'll be there for good. So it's just a perfect time to get that cleaned up. And what you're left with is two clean, clear Alice designs. I use my mat and stick them to that. And then I'm going to pull out my Mod Podge and we're going to pour a little bit of this into one of our med cups. Which, by the way, I never do. I always just use my brush in the top of the cap. But we're trying to be fancy for YouTube, so we're going to go ahead and pour it into a cup. I'm going to take a little bit of this. Yes, admire my band, my watch band. It's available in our shop. We're going to take a little bit of this and go ahead and just coat the sticker parts on our design. So I use a glossy resin or a glossy Mod Podge. I haven't used matte. I think I might have actually used matte once, and it left a real weird residue underneath the resin, which obviously we don't want. So with this glossy Mod Podge, I found that once I pour my resin on top of it, it's gone. You don't even see it. Basically disappears. So I would use this. Certainly try other things if you feel like you don't like the way this looks. But we're going to go ahead and coat this completely. And you can basically saturate it. I try to get, there's lots of little bubbles that will develop over your stickers. But if you kind of just, you can kind of brush them away. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is just make sure that there's no pockets of air so that when we do pour our resin on, we don't get a lot of bubbles. If you do not use some kind of Mod Podge or something on this, you will get about a gazillion little bubbles that form over your design, over your image. I found that out the hard way multiple times. I don't know what it is about this paper, this sticker paper, but when you use it, if you don't coat it with something and kind of seal it, you end up getting all these little bubbles, and they're just, it doesn't matter if you take a blowtorch to them, anything, they just do not disappear. So this method is what I use just to be safe because you obviously don't want any bubbles in your design. Once you feel like you have everything pretty well coated, you can just try to tap away some of those bubbles. Some of them will just disappear. Most of them should pop regardless when the Mod Podge does dry. But I just make sure to go around the edges of my sticker paper on my resin and make sure that that's all coated very well. And we're going to let this sit for 24 to 48 hours again. Again, this is a time-consuming project, but definitely worth it in the end. If you try to use this too soon after putting your Mod Podge on, those bubbles still form. So we're going to let it sit. We're all good. I'm going to give you a close-up what those should look like coated. And thank you guys so much. Come back for part 3.